Alright guys, welcome back to 2-Bit DaVinci, and today we're going to talk about some really cool tips and tricks to make really good time-lapse photography on your new G85, but really any camera. We're going to focus on G85, but a lot of these tips will probably relate to any camera that you might have. So there's something about the passage of time that just makes for really compelling video. And you'll notice that they're really popular these days. A lot of the vloggers like Casey Neistat use a lot of time-lapse, and it's just such a cool way to show the passage of time and to put a lot of content into a small amount of video. And so we want to show you how we do it on our G85. So the first thing is there is a mode for the time-lapse setting in the G85. You'll want to turn the mode down left to the time-lapse setting. And then if you click on the menu, you're going to see the time-lapse options. And so now you can choose the duration, so how long between shots. So for example, a shot every second, a shot every 10 seconds, one shot a minute, and you can set that to all the way up to like, a shot an hour. And then you can also set the number of shots you want to take. And at the bottom, you'll see on the screen here, it tells you when the footage will be done, which is really cool because you can kind of say, okay, I want to start around 5 p.m. and I want to shoot till 9 p.m. And so it helps you do that. So the first tip I would tell you is go out and get that AC adapter. So if you haven't checked out our video on must-have accessories for the G85, check that out. We mentioned there's an AC adapter you should check out. That way you don't have to risk running out of battery power. And if you're out in the field and that's not an option, make sure you have a couple extra batteries. We talked about that in that video as well. So now you have your footage and you're ready to rock and roll. So in this particular video, we're going to talk about Final Cut Pro, but it's probably pretty similar to Premiere as well. So here I have some footage that I took one sunset in the front of my house. It's not the best time lapse in the world, but I think it'll serve the purpose of this demonstration pretty well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click Command A on the keyboard and we're going to select all the files, and then we're going to drag it onto our timeline. You'll notice some of the clips are different length. Don't worry about that. That's because you can tell here that it wasn't selected to the same level that the others were, but that doesn't matter. So now to see the entire timeline fit to the window, I'm going to click Shift Z, and now I can see all my files. And now what I'll do is again, I'll click Command A to select everything. Check out how it looks. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to a compound clip, and we'll call this time lapse. Okay, so now it's a compound clip and I can edit it internally here. So now that I'm in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, again, Command A to select all of my images. Now I'm gonna click Control D for duration. And I'm gonna change the duration of each one of these pictures to just, well, I only have 100 photos, so I would recommend normally a duration of 1 frame, but I'm gonna make it 2 frames just to make it a little bit longer. Okay, so again, I can Shift to Z to zoom in, and now if I hit play, you'll see there's a little bit of a time lapse happening here. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm gonna back out of here. Okay, and again, the reason why I made it the duration 2 frames is because it's a pretty short video otherwise, and just to make it feel a little bit longer, I made it 2 seconds. But if you've got a lot of footage, you're gonna wanna do 1 frame, and it'll make for a good shot. Okay, so now your timeline is set up, and you're looking pretty good. Your time lapse has a good vibe to it. Now there's a couple of things. The first thing you'll notice is because you took photos, you're gonna have that crop box, and that's because of the aspect ratio. The camera is gonna shoot in 4:3, whereas your video is gonna be in 16:9. So there's a couple ways we can fix that. And obviously you could do something as simple as just changing the scale here, right? And you can just kind of zoom in and now that's gone and you're in business. But what I wanna talk about here is some of the cool stuff about the G85 and actually any camera. So now let me just bring in this picture. So here's a little demonstration I put together. So here actually, if you look on the crop boxes on the screen, the outer one is what 4K footage would look like. So for a 1:1 pixel map 4K, you'll see that we have a lot of extra room and we can actually move it around. And again, because 16:9 is wider, you'll notice that we don't have as much room to play left and right as we do top to bottom. Now, if you're making a 1080p time lapse, you'll see that you can actually zoom in and move around quite a bit and get some pretty cool effects. But we're making this video in 4K, so we're gonna focus on 4K. So what this tells you is I'm gonna just take the scale here and move it up. And you'll notice that I'm not actually zooming in into the 4K, I'm actually just showing it pixel by pixel, and I can zoom in to about here, which is 160%. So there's a little tip for you. If you're gonna take 4K on your G85, which is a 16 megapixel camera, that's what determines this. If you had a Sony a7R II, which is a 42 megapixel camera, these crop boxes are going to be a lot smaller and you can have a lot more movement. At 160% now, our image is going to fill the frame of a 4K picture. And just for fun, if you wanted to make a 1080p video, how much Further, could you zoom in and still get 1080p? 320%, because that clearly is double what the 4K was. And what's cool is now, obviously, as you can tell, I can move that around and do some pretty cool stuff. So as cool as time-lapse is, what's really, really cool is the effect of the camera moving in a time-lapse. And that's really what I want to get at today. So how do we do that? Let's take our picture. We can get rid of it now that we know what we're doing. And it's actually really easy in Final Cut. And I'm sure it's very similar in Premiere as well. So all we're going to do is we're going to go to the crop mode. And here you'll notice that we have the Ken Burns effect, which is really, really convenient. It's really easy to do. So all we're going to do is we're going to the very beginning of our shot here. And we're going to set our starting frame to just get rid of the bounding boxes and just kind of zoom in right about there. And so now we're going to start kind of low. Obviously we want more of the sky, but what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in and move up to the sky. So now the end, what we'll do, we're going to move up. And so if we left it like that, it's not going to zoom, it'll just move up. So let's see what that looks like. And I'll turn that off, and you'll notice that the camera is moving now. So now the effect is that your camera's on a slider and there's motion, and that's pretty cool. But the Ken Burns effect really is about zooming. Let's try that again. So we'll go back to crop, and we're on Ken Burns, and for the end, we're gonna bring this in a little bit. And just like we mentioned before, you can bring it in a bit, about to there, and not lose any data, and not, zoom in or magnify the pixels. So that should be fine. And we really want to get some of the really nice rich, so we'll go about there, I think. So now we'll turn that mode off, and we'll come back and we'll play it again. And you'll notice it's kind of choppy. That's because it's rendering in real time, but the final video is going to be pretty sweet. And that looks really good. And by the way, these pictures are raw from my, they're just JPEGs that I have not touched at all. So these are just the raw pictures from my G85, which is pretty good. And so there we have it. So now we have a cool way to understand just how much room we have to move around with. And with the Ken Burns effect, in about, what, a minute, I was able to make that pretty cool time lapse. And we'll play that again here. Once I render it, we'll get the output and we'll show you the final result. So now the other thing I want to talk to you about is I actually spent a little bit of time and I put together a little calculator. And I think this will be really helpful. So if you want to get a copy of this, check out our website in the description, and we'll have a link to where you can get this, and you can just like copy and paste it or do something and take it and move it and use it for your own needs. But let's take a look at what I did on my video. Here in the spreadsheet, the green columns are the ones that you're going to adjust, you're going to modify, and the gray you don't touch, and the yellow you don't touch. The yellow is going to be your output. In the time lapse that I just showed you was shot for about 35 minutes, and a shot was taken every 20 seconds. So as a result, we got about 100 photos out of it. And if you played it in 24 frames per second, which is what you're watching now, it will last about 4 seconds. Now that's why I made the duration 2 frames to make it about 8 seconds, if you remember on the timeline. Now if you're international and you're shooting at 25 frames per second, it's about 4 seconds still. 30, you're not gonna notice too much here because of all the rounding. And this custom here, you can set this to whatever you want. So if you were shooting 100 frames per second for some crazy reason, it'll tell you how long your video will last. And this is really nice because if you're aiming to get around a 10-second intro time lapse, well, maybe you can aim for that. Let's say, for example, you want to capture a day, in your neighborhood or in your city or somewhere out of your window. And let's say you want to take a photo. Let's say you want to take 6 hours of footage. Now, what you're gonna see here is it'll start to tell you how long this file is going to be. If I took a picture one time a minute for 6 hours, I would have 360 photos, which would be about 15 seconds. Now that might be good for you. Or maybe you're making a 1-minute video and you want longer than that. Well, this will help you kind of figure out what you wanna do. So here, let's say we took a picture every 20 seconds. Now we're getting closer, 45 seconds, so maybe about every 15 seconds should do it. So now we know that if you wanna take a 6-hour video, you would take 1 photo every 15 seconds, which will result in 1440 photos, and it'll give you a minute of playback time in your final video. And again, if you're shooting 30 frames, that would only be 48 seconds. And your custom here, you can put whatever you want if you have some special frame rate you're using. But this calculator, I think, will be really helpful and really handy for you guys. So check it out. We'll have a link to it. We'll share it with you guys, and we would love to see some of your videos. If you're a YouTuber or a videographer or anything, and you take some of these amazing time lapse, please share them with us. We're on social. We'd love to see what you guys come up with, and we really hope you guys got something out of it. And as we promised, here is the final footage that we just took. And as you can see, it's a pretty cool effect. It looks really good. It's clean 4K, and we got it out of our G85. So one last thing is, if you take a time lapse and when it finishes, it'll ask you if you want to make a movie out of it on your camera. Now, when I first saw that, I thought that was really cool and I did it. But the problem problem there is you can't do any of these kinds of Ken Burns effects on the camera. So the best thing to do is say no to that. Bring your images into Final Cut or your editing software, and with a couple of clicks like I showed you, you can make your own. All right, so there you have it, guys. There's a quick rundown on how to take really great time-lapse videos with your G85 or any camera really. And we hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing. We'll keep the good content coming. And as always, we'll catch you guys next time.